Everyone dies in Game of Thrones, everyone suffers in House of the Dragon, but the new show, people might actually survive and be happy. The trailer for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms just dropped, and people are saying it's completely different from anything we've seen in Westeros. They're right, and I'm about to explain exactly why. So if you haven't heard, HBO just released the first trailer for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms at New York Comic Con, and it's coming January the 18th, 2026. Now this is the third live-action show set in Westeros, after Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. But here's the thing, this one is fundamentally different. And I don't just mean, oh, it's set in a different time period. Different. I mean the entire DNA of the story is different. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is based on George R.R. Martin's Dunk and Egg novellas, specifically starting with The Hedge Knight. George has written 3 of these stories so far: The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight. And these tales, they're set about 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones. Book readers have been begging for this adaptation for years. Why? Because these stories are beloved. They're different from the main series in ways that make them special. And from what we've seen in the trailer, HBO seems to be capturing that difference. So today, I'm breaking down exactly how A Night of the Seven Kingdoms differs from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. We're talking scale, story structure, tone, characters, everything. And I'll explain why these differences could make this the best adaptation yet. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about scale, because this is probably the most obvious difference. Game of Thrones was massive. We're talking about a war for the Iron Throne that engulfed the entire continent. The North, the South, beyond the Wall, across the Narrow Sea, everything was connected. You had dozens of major characters, multiple kingdoms at war, and the fate of Westeros hanging in the balance. It was epic fantasy on the grandest scale possible, armies clashing, political schemes spanning continents, and existential threats like the White Walkers. That was the point. It was big. House of the Dragon scaled back a bit, but it's still huge. We've got a civil war within House Targaryen, massive dragon battles, and 2 entire factions fighting for succession. It's still armies, it's still kingdoms choosing sides, it's still war that affects everyone in Westeros. The scale is slightly more focused than Game of Thrones, but we're still talking about a conflict that tears the realm apart. Now, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Completely different scale. We're following 2 main characters, that's it. Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk, and his squire, a kid he calls Egg. These are just 2 guys traveling across Westeros, having adventures. The conflicts are personal, not who will sit on the Iron Throne, personal. More like, we need to win this tournament to afford food, personal. Or, this local lord is being unjust to peasants, personal. From the trailer we see tournaments, trial by combat, smaller conflicts. The book stories are structured like this too. Each novella is basically one adventure. Think of it like a road trip show, but medieval. We've gone from the fate of the Seven Kingdoms to, can these 2 guys not starve today? And honestly, that's refreshing. George R.R. Martin wrote these as shorter, more contained stories. He actually said he wrote them as palate cleansers between working on the massive main series. And that shows the scale is intentionally smaller, more intimate. So to summarize scale, Game of Thrones, Continental War, dozens of POVs, epic fantasy. House of the Dragon, Civil War, 2 factions, still massive. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, 2 guys, personal adventures, human-scale problems. It's like going from Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit. Smaller scope, but that's not a bad thing. Alright, now let's talk about how these stories are told, because the structure is wildly different. Game of Thrones was an ensemble cast with multiple point-of-view characters. You had the Starks in the north, the Lannisters in King's Landing, Daenerys across the sea, Jon at the Wall. Everyone's stories were happening simultaneously and would eventually intersect. The plot was complex. Like, you need a chart to remember who's related to who complex. Political schemes within schemes, mysteries building over seasons, long-term payoffs. Everything was interconnected. The Red Wedding doesn't just happen. It's the result of decisions made seasons earlier. That's the kind of intricate plotting we're talking about. House of the Dragon has a more focused structure. It's essentially following 2 sides of a family conflict. Team Black versus Team Green, Rhaenyra versus Alicent, and everyone's forced to pick a side. It's structured like a Greek tragedy. We know from the start how this ends. Badly for everyone. The story is about watching these people make terrible choices that lead to inevitable disaster. It's a slow-burn family drama that explodes into war. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. This is a DUO protagonist story. The entire focus is on Dunk and Egg, their friendship and their journey together. And here's the key difference. This is based on novellas, shorter, self-contained stories. Each novella George wrote tells basically one complete adventure. Beginning, middle, end. Relatively neat and tidy. The first season is adapting The Hedge Knight, which is one story. It's about Dunk entering a tournament, and what happens there. That's it. One story arc. The structure is character-driven, not plot-driven. It's not about what crazy twist is coming next. It's about how do these two people grow and change through their experiences. From the trailer, we're seeing that focus. Dunk and Egg's interactions, their dynamic, their friendship developing. That's the core of the show. For once in Westeros, you don't need a flowchart to follow the story. You just need to care about two people. Revolutionary concept, I know. It's simpler, and that's intentional. These are stories about people, not politics. Okay, this is the big one, the tone, because this is what really sets A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms apart. Game of Thrones was dark, like trust no one, love no one, everyone dies. The show became famous for killing off beloved characters, brutal betrayals, and moral ambiguity. Good people got punished. Ned Stark tried to do the right thing, beheaded. Robb Stark was honorable. Red Wedding. The lesson seemed to be honor gets you killed. And in the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. The tone was cynical, nihilistic even. Nobody was purely good, and the bad guys often won. That was the point. It was subverting fantasy tropes by making everything brutal and realistic. Watching Game of Thrones required therapy afterwards. That was part of the experience. House of the Dragon is tragic. It's doom and gloom from the start, because we know this family destroys itself. Nobody wins, everyone suffers, and the dance of the dragons leaves the Targaryens broken. It's a tragedy in the classical sense. Good intentions lead to terrible outcomes. Every character makes the worst possible decision at every turn. And we're just watching this slow-motion car crash, knowing it ends in disaster. The tone is heavy, fatalistic. Even the moments of hope are tinged with, yeah, but we know this doesn't last. And then there's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is actually hopeful. The trailer shows us warmth, friendship, humor. We see Dunk and Egg joking around, supporting each other, going on adventures together. There's levity, there's light. And this matches the books perfectly. George wrote these stories with a different tone. They're not dark and cynical. They're about good people, staying good. In the Dunk and Egg novellas, honor actually matters. Loyalty is real. Friendship is genuine. Good knights exist, and they don't immediately get murdered for being decent. Dunk is genuinely honorable. He protects the weak, keeps his word, tries to do the right thing. And the story doesn't punish him for it. Egg is idealistic and kind, wants to help people, and that's portrayed as good, not naive stupidity that will get him killed. Now listen, this doesn't mean it's a kid's show or that there's no danger. The trailer shows us plenty of action, fights, stakes. People can still get hurt. Bad things can still happen, but the fundamental tone is different. This isn't everyone suffers and dies. It's good people can do good things, and maybe, just maybe, they'll be okay. George himself said he wanted to show that true knights can exist in Westeros, that honor isn't just a trap that gets you killed, that heroes can be heroic. It's Westeros without the generational trauma. The difference is night and day, or more accurately, night and slightly cloudy afternoon. Alright, quick pause. If you're finding this breakdown helpful and you want more content on A Song of Ice and Fire, from Dunk and Egg to Game of Thrones characters and lore, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. It helps me know you want more of this. Now, let's talk about the important difference, the characters. Let's talk characters, because this might be the most important difference. Game of Thrones characters were complex, morally grey, hidden agendas, capable of both good and terrible things. That was the brilliance. Nobody was purely good or evil, but it also meant it was hard to fully root for anyone. Tyrion's smart but vengeful. Jon's honorable but rigid. Daenerys wants to help people but becomes a tyrant. Everyone has major flaws that lead to disaster. House of the Dragon gives us tragic figures. These are people making terrible choices for understandable reasons. You can sympathize with them while also going, "No, don't do that. That's stupid." Nobody's the clear hero. Everyone's the villain in someone else's story. It's compelling but exhausting. And then we have Dunk and Egg, who are actually likable. Dunk is a wandering knight who stands up for people and fights for justice. Egg is his young squire who's smart and idealistic, and their friendship, it's genuine. They support each other, balance each other out, and actually care about doing good. That's it. Two good people on an adventure together. You can actually want them to succeed without feeling guilty. What a concept. Now, before anyone thinks this is a totally different world, it's not. This is still Westeros. Still George R.R. Martin's writing. Some things absolutely stay the same. It still has George's writing quality, complex characters, rich world building, meaningful dialogue, political intrigue, just on a smaller scale. Real consequences, actions matter, choices have weight. Violence and danger. The trailer shows plenty of fights and stakes. Medieval realism, gritty, grounded, believable. Class conflict. The divide between nobles and commoners is a huge theme. Trial by combat. We see this in the trailer. Tournaments. Classic Westeros tradition. The same houses and history. This is the same world. 90 years before Game of Thrones. This is set during Targaryen rule, after dragons went extinct, but before Robert's rebellion. The world is more stable, but it's the same Westeros geography, same noble houses, same feudal system. And it's still written by George. The man completed these novellas. All 3 published stories are finished. So the quality of character work, the dialogue, the world building, it's all there. It's not Westeros, kid-friendly edition. It's Westeros, character-focused edition. Okay, so with all these differences, here's the question. Could Knight of the Seven Kingdoms actually be better than Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon? Obviously, we haven't seen the show yet, but there are some really compelling reasons why this could work incredibly well. Reason 1. Finished source material. George R.R. Martin completed these stories. All 3 novellas are done. The writers know the beginning, middle, and end before they start filming. Remember Game of Thrones Season 8? Yeah, that happened because the show caught up to the books and had to make up an ending. That can't happen here. The ending already exists. Reason 2. Emotional investment. With only 2 main characters, you can get deeply invested in them. You're not splitting your attention between 20 storylines. You're following 2 people, learning everything about them, caring about their journey. When you care about the characters this much, every moment hits harder. Every victory feels earned. Every danger feels real. Reason 3. Fresh perspective. This shows us Westeros from the ground level, not kings and queens scheming in castles. Regular people just trying to survive and do good in a complicated world. That's a perspective we haven't really seen before. And it makes the world feel more real, more lived in. Reason 4. Accessibility. New viewers can start here. You don't need to have watched Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. You don't need to know the lore. This is a self-contained story with 2 characters in a relatively simple narrative. It's an entry point into Westeros for people who were intimidated by Game of Thrones' complexity. Reason 5. Something different. After years of dark, cynical, everyone dies storytelling in this franchise, we're getting something different. Hope, friendship, good people doing good things. And after Game of Thrones is ending and the intensity of House of the Dragon, maybe we need that. Maybe we're ready for heroes we can actually root for. Imagine watching a Westeros show where you don't need a support group afterwards.